numbers, and yoga means union. So what it means, numbers and union. So numbers can, in this context, it means enumeration, and it consists, it gives a, hello? Yeah, so it gives an investigation and analysis of the reality. So here the Lord is trying to give a logical analysis of the self. And this is mainly from verses 31 to 38, and actually the main problem, it's interesting, Namananda Prabhu asked this question to Sankarshan Prabhu. I think one of the main reason is that's because we identify ourselves with the body when we are actually the soul. So in this chapter, it's logically Krishna is trying to analyze, and give logic why we're not the body, but we are the soul. So that's a reason why it's called Sankhya, or analytics. So this chapter can there are mainly 5 sections to this in this chapter, and I'm just trying to get my. All right, so the verses 1 to 10 is Arjuna has further questions to Krishna. Krishna in the previous chapter, we saw Krishna has Arjuna has all these questions, and Krishna is trying to convince him, but he still is not completely convinced. And the next section is verses 11 to 30, where Krishna is describing to Arjuna the nature of the soul. Then we have verses 31 to 30, where actually Krishna analyzes why, he gives out reasons why you are not the body, but you are the soul. Then we have the difference between 39 to 53, the difference between karma kanda and devotional service. And finally, the last section, verses 54 to 72, deals with becoming fixed in Krishna consciousness, in other words, described as sthita pragya. So we can just go over each sections in brief. So Arjuna's main further question is he's actually asking Krishna also this: would you kill your own relatives if there was a war? How can I kill teachers like Drona and my grandfather like Bhishma, and then all my cousins who are standing on? I have actually grown up with them, and what is the use of killing them? It is better to live as a beggar, better to live in poverty than have a kingdom which is tainted by the blood of by killing your own relatives. He's completely overcome by grief at this moment, and he doesn't know what to do. And then he finally, at this point, he surrenders to Krishna and tells him I do not know what to do. Oh Krishna, you advise me, and because I do not know what to do. At this point, he's actually surrendering to Krishna. And then one thing important to note is if you need to get instruction from somebody, then we have to have complete trust in him and surrender to him. Otherwise, there's no point in at that point we recognize somebody as a spiritual master, and we can see here in this part Arjuna is accepting Krishna as a spiritual master. So we go to section 2. At this point, Krishna says Krishna Arjuna actually realizes that things are not so black and white. So that's the reason he's asking Krishna for further instructions. So then at that point, Krishna says you're speaking like a wise man, but actually what you're doing is it seems wise, but it's really foolish of you. Because then he explains to him the difference between the body, which is destructible, and soul, which is permanent. And then Krishna reads out various verses, like, I mean, these verses are very important, like for us to know and remember. So what Krishna says, like wise people who are wise, they do not actually lament the living or the dead, because the soul is eternal. The first verse he speaks is in this connection is like, Natvevaham jatunasham natvevam neme janadipa nacheva bhavishyama sarve vayamata param. There was never a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future any of us shall cease to be. As the embodied soul passes continuously from boyhood to old age, to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at the time of death. The self-realized is not bewildered by such a change. So, I mean, I didn't read the words, I'll just read it out. Dehinosmin yatha dehe kaumaram yavanam jara tatha dehantara pratir dhiras tatra namuyati. Matrasparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkada agama paino nityastam titiksha swabharata. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. These arise from sense perception. O sign of Bharata, one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. So this 12, 13, 14 verses, they actually tell you like how the body actually dies, but the soul lives on in various bodies. And at the time of death, what happens? It just goes and attains a different body. For the soul, there is never birth or death, nor having once been, does he cease to be. He's unborn, eternal, never existing, undying, and primeval. He's not slain when the body is slain. Na jayate mriyate va kadachin nayam bhutva bhavita bhuya ajo nitya shashvato yam purano na hanyate hanyamane sharire. And so the conclusion of this verse is like, this section is that the body is eternal, a body is temporary, and the soul is eternal. Then he also tells Arjuna that even if he does not believe that there is a soul, actually this was a very popular philosophy at that time, but by some people known as the Vaibhasika. So it was their philosophy. So even if there's he's not actually risking any rebirth, and there is no reason for like Arjuna to be affected. That he's not going to be affected with sinful reactions due to killing of his relatives, grandparents, and teacher. And that was one of the arguments Arjuna gives. Like it'll be a sin to kill all his relatives just to gain a kingdom. So that's the verse in this. If, however, you think Arjuna's soul is permanently bought and always dies, you still have no reason to lament, O mighty armed. Ata chainam nityajatam nityam vamanya se mritam tathapi tvam mahabaho nainam sochitam arhasi. So who dwells in the body is eternal and can never be slain. So you need not grieve for any creature. So we can see Krishna stressing that soul is eternal and is not affected by anything that afflicts the body. Krishna argues Arjuna to give up lamentation and fight. Now, like having philosophically explained that Arjuna's arrows won't destroy the relative's essence, Krishna is explaining Arjuna why he needs to fight, given his role as a Kshatriya. Now, he's like as a Kshatriya, you're a guardian of the society. And even if when fighting honorably, even if he dies, he'll attain heaven. So he should not actually he should not actually give up fighting, because as a Kshatriya, his duty is to protect the society. If he does not fight, then people are going to call him a coward, and also because he'll incur sin because he's not doing his dharma. But if he runs away, he'll get infamy, and everyone is going to say he's run away from the battle. If he dies, even if he fights dying, he'll attain heaven. So that's the reason why he should actually fight. So I just repeated what they said. If if Arjuna fights, he'll be killed on the battlefield and attain heavenly planets, or you will conquer and enjoy earthly kingdom. So without considering happiness or destroy, loss or gain, victory or defeat, he should fight for the sake of duty. By so doing, you shall never incur sin. So it's just in even other words, like each of us, what we have to do is it's an advice to all of us. Like we should actually do our duty, not looking at whether it gives us happiness or whether it makes you distressed, because duty is most important. We should have unattached, and we should actually fight. We should actually do our duty without any any attachment. I mean, and I'll just read out the main verses in this. Like this section, actually, Krishna starts with this. However, if you do not fight this religious war, then you certainly incur sins for neglecting your duties and lose your reputation as a fighter. Ata chetvam imam dharmyam sangramam na karyashi tatha swadharman kritim cha hitva papam avapyasi. And this section is like verses 32 to 38, right? So this conclusion of this verse is sukhaduke same kritva labdha labho jaya jara tato yudhaya yujaswa naivam papam apasya. Do not fight for the sake of fighting without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat, and by doing so you shall never incur sin. So if we do our duty without, without any attachment, that's the way to actually be sinless, or do not to get any karma. So doing our duty is like the most doing our duty without any attachment. The fourth section deals with the fourth section deals with like karma kanda. This is the difference between karma kanda and devotional service. In this section, Krishna starts off by telling Arjuna that he will now explain the knowledge of yoga, where one works without fruitive results and frees himself from the bondage of works. And he starts the first chapter, this section, with the first verse, where it says, in Neha Bikrama Nashosti Patravayona Vidyate Swalpamapiyasya Dharmasya Traito Mahato Bhaya. So in this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution, and little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. So what it means is like devotional service, or where you work without fruitive results, which, in other words, working without fruitive results, later on Krishna will conclude, is actually devotional service. So if one performs devotional service, there is that devotional service is never going to be lost. But what if you do other things, like if you do like karma kanda, like you might get some results which are like temporary. You might get a karma kanda is usually done. Why? You're doing it so you can get some material benefits, and that all the material benefits, whatever you get, is always temporary. But this devotional service is there with you always. That's why I'm saying there's no loss or diminution and little advancement in this, and protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. Men of small knowledge are very attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, resultant good birth, power, and so forth. In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, devotional service to the Lord does not take place. So people who are actually into karma kanda, all they're looking is like they're not really looking for any devotional. They're not looking to serve the Supreme Lord, or they're not. Even if they do, that even if they're praying to the Supreme Lord, it's just for something temporary, and the results of which eventually are going to finish. And then he further explains that actually the Vedas actually deal with three modes of material nature, and someone like Arjuna or somebody who's practicing devotional service will eventually rise above these three modes and become transcendental to all of them. Be free from the dualities and all anxieties for gain and safety, and be established in the self. Which means like we should not be looking for gain, like for protection and safety. Like we should not be looking to gain anything, or all dharma is most important, and it should be done as a offering to Krishna. This is another important verse. All purposes that are served by small pond can at once be served by great reservoirs of water. Similarly, all the purposes of the Vedas can be served to one who knows the purpose behind them. Yavan artha udapane sarvat samplutoktade tavan sarveshu vedeshu brahmanasya vijanataha. Like Krishna is the one who is like who knows the purpose behind the Vedas. So if you perform devotional service to Krishna, whatever other things are needed, whatever little things are needed will be given by Krishna. So you don't really need to actually do the karma kanda, but you have to serve the person behind them, which is Sri Krishna. Then we come to one of the most important verses of the Bhagavad Gita, which is verse 47. Karmanyava adhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phala heturgur ma te sangosta karmani. You have a right to perform your prescribed duties, but you're not entitled to the fruits of action. Never consider yourself to be the cause of the results of your activities, and never be attached to not doing your duty. So the attachment we should actually have is not to the results. The attachment should be to the duty itself. So the results will be, the results will come. It may be positive or negative or whatever. That comes from the Supreme Lord, and but we should do our duty. We should be just attached to doing our duty. That way, we will be always at peace. And the ways like you can actually be not attached to the fruits is by offering them to Sri Krishna. The conclusion of this section is to rid yourself of all fruitive activities by devotional service and fully surrender to that consciousness. And those who want to enjoy the fruits of their work are actually misers. Such detached dutifulness coupled with inner equanimity is the essence of yoga, and this will lead to ultimate liberation. So here, like, we can see the difference between karma kanda and
devotional service.
Yeah, devotional service. Thank you, Prabhu. So we can see karma kanda is actually done by men with small minds, who just want to enjoy themselves with some services, and but the greater purpose is to serve the Supreme Lord without any attachment to the results, and in fact offer all the results to Him. So that's the main of this section. Then we come to section verses 54 to 72. This is the final section, and Krishna explains how to become fixed in devotional service. Krishna explains the guidelines which makes one spiritually purposeful and thus become immune to material enticements, even if coming from the Vedas. Even if they're coming from the Vedas, they'll only entrap Arjuna's intelligence into a forest of delusion. So what Arjuna needs to do, he has to become spiritually purposeful and become immune to material enticements. So Arjuna wants to know more about the characteristics of these the spiritualists. He wants to know how do they behave, how do they sit, how do they move around. So the Lord tells Arjuna, this is I can't remember which verse. Sri Bhagavan Vacha Prajati Yada Kamam Sarvam Partha Manogatam Atmani Evatma Tushtaha Stita Prajna Tadachate. The blessed Lord said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of sense desire, his desire from mental concoction, and when his mind finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. So one has to give up all sense desires. That's the main thing. And he has to find satisfaction in his self alone, in himself. So Krishna states that spiritual seekers are like tortoises who withdraw their limbs into the body. Despite such withdrawal, the desire for pleasure still remains inside them, keeping them restless. Then another verse, which is like verse 59, Vishayavini vartante niraharasya demina rasavarjam rasopi asya param drashtva nivartate. The embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, and the taste of sense enjoyment remains. But ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. So what Krishna is telling here is people, the desire to enjoy senses will always be there. So what one does is they're like tortoise. They just withdraw inside a shell, and they kind of they just into the shell, but it doesn't mean they have no desires. It keeps coming. It keeps coming to them, and so what do? To avoid such any faults? They focus on the divine, even though they just focus on it. They do not actually, if any thoughts come, they just ignore it. If what happens if they dwell on this, they will if they dwell on it, then what happens? They will be propelled towards infatuation, obsession, stupefaction, and eventually self-destruction. Then Krishna actually outlines a two-pronged approach, putting aside personal attachments and aversion and aligning with a time-honored spiritual wisdom. And by such purposeful action, Arjuna can attain spiritual purity, intellectual clarity, and release from misery. So the main thing is the main thing is actually by concentrating on the Supreme. Well, the main thing is by doing devotional service. And that's how Srila Prabhupada says that connecting yourself with the Supreme is by doing devotional service. So what happens if you don't? Then your desire will actually lead them into sensuality and overpowering with insights and endeavors. To avoid such faults, we need to complement sensual restraint with focus on the divine, which provides inner satisfaction. In this, we always see the, we always talk about Haridas Thakur, where even though he was enticed by a prostitute, like he didn't fall. But we have other examples from the Puranas, where great sages, they just, by hearing the tinkling of some apsaras, they fall down. So we have such. We have all this example. So like I said before, like putting aside personal attachments and aversion and aligning with time-honored spiritual wisdom, for which key is inner spiritual connectedness. So we have to connect our soul with the spiritual our spirituality inside. Without that, Arjuna won't have any clarity or composure, leave alone happiness. And even one sensual temptation can actually, cause fall down. Indriyanam hi charantam yanmano nubitate tat asya harati prashnam vayur navami iva. See, just as a boat is swept away by strong wind, even one of the senses on which the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence. This is verse 67. Therefore, people with intelligence control their senses. So that spiritualists are very different from the materialist, just like a day is opposed to night. By the spiritual connectedness, the wise become like an ocean, unaffected by inflow of sensual desires. So the sensual desires are like rivers which come into the mind, but the ocean, even though thousands of rivers are flowing into the ocean remains very calm and steadfast. Similarly, intelligent people, even though they're getting all these desires, they just control their senses. And the way to control their senses, Srila Prabhupada says, is to perform devotional service. So all our senses are actually serving the Lord. So we have this example of the Maharaj, like Ambarish Maharaj. Yes, there you go. Who actually, we have the example, whose eyes are always looking at the other deities, and his smell is always smelling the tulasi which is offered to the Lord. His limbs are always carrying him to the devotional places. His tongue is tasting the prasadam of the Lord. His body is always the skin is always being touched by other devotees of the Lord. So all his senses are engaged in service of the Lord. So same way, and that way, even if all those desires flow into us, it's not going to, because they're just ignored, because you have more important things to do, which is actually serving the Lord. So other desires are kind of ignored, and that way you remain steadfast in devotional service. So that's like the tortoise, withdrawing all the limbs and just doing whatever it needs to do. And in this section, they also says for such spiritualists, it's when it's day for the materialists, it's actually night for them, and it's just that everything is opposite compared to a materialist. Now this is the concluding verse. Esha brahmistita partha nainam prapya vimukate stita vasyam antakale pi brahmana nirvanam rachati. In this, that is the way of spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. Being so situated, even at the hour of death, one can enter the kingdom of God. So being spiritually situated, they're free from anything, all the worldly bewilderments. They're not think what is happening in the world will not bother them. And at the time of death, they will attain the ultimate spiritual liberation. So we see like what happened to the presentation. So we see, like, even though this is Sakya, but Srila Prabhupada has translated it as contents of the Gita summarized. So you can see, like, in this 5 sections, there is the entirety of Bhagavad Gita in them, in it. So it also it starts with the Arjuna's problems, his doubts, his question. Then Krishna explains to him, like, why you should not have any problems killing somebody, because you're not actually this body. You're actually spirit soul, and nothing can damage the spirit soul. And so even if you're killing your relatives, you're not actually killing them. But in fact, what actually you should be doing, you should be like trying to do your duty, your dharma. And as a Kshatriya, your dharma is to protect or vanquish evil. And the Kauravas are clearly evil, and they have to be vanquished. And then Arjuna becomes, he asks questions on, like, how about, like, how is the spirit, how does the spiritual list is, how do you recognize them? Then Krishna gives out, like, all the way, like how it's like a tortoise, withdraws everything, and and is attached to devotional service. They are not attached to the results of their actions. In fact, everyone should be offering the results of their action to the Supreme Lord, and this is Karma Yoga. And the famous verse which we the Karma Neva Adhikaraste Ma Phaleshu Kadachana. So you can see the entirety of the Bhagavad Gita actually summarized in this chapter. That's why Srila Prabhupada is rightly translated as contents of the Gita summarized. I'll actually finish here, and we can have any questions.
Thank you, Subal Prabhu, summarizing the second chapter. Dear devotees, there's a time for questions. Please unmute yourself and raise if you have any questions, comments, or reflections.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Thank you very much for the class, Prabhuji. Both of you. So just one question. Not sure if it makes sense, but please forgive my ignorance, but just asking real reason for it. So basically, without binding ourselves to the outcome result of the activity, we do the action. Then what is the motivation for my action?
What is that? Yes, Prabhu. Is your question over, Prabhu?
That's the question that, if I say someone that without, expecting much about the results or outcome of the activity, perform your activity, right? Then what is the motivation for me to perform the activity? If I'm
Yes, Prabhu, I got your question. It's a very, it's a question. Yeah, everybody is doing something because they need something. Otherwise, we wouldn't actually do anything, right? Right. But one thing we need to understand is, like, everybody, we all have our dharma, we all have our dharma, and if you're doing with this motivation of enjoying or getting a result so we can actually enjoy, so what happens is that once that results come and you enjoy, but you have to remember that results, whatever you get, is actually temporary, and there is no guarantee you will get the result also. So even if you get it, it's temporary. Other thing is, even if you get that result, if you do not get that result, you're going to be, like, frustrated, you're going to be sad, you're going to be, and again, if you get the result, like I said, if you get it, it's temporary. And then once that enjoyment or whatever is over, then you're not going to feel. You're just going to feel not so happy. Let's say at work, you're striving very hard because you want to get a promotion. Then what happens? You get a promotion. The first few days you'll be very happy. Then eventually that the joy which you've got out of your promotion will wear off, and then then you want something better. So you look for the next higher promotion, like whatever you can get. So you'll work even harder. But if you are actually not really looking at the result, but you're actually looking at your purpose, you're sincerely doing what you needed to do, then you would still eventually you would get that promotion, but you wouldn't be too high elated, or you wouldn't be, and when that effect of that wears off, you wouldn't be too sad. And even if the promotion doesn't come, you'll still be okay with, you wouldn't feel too bad about it. So the important thing is, like, we shouldn't be doing things with expectation of our result. The motivation itself should be to do our duty, and that duty should be done as an offering to Krishna. So even whatever good comes out of that promotion, whatever good things happen, that'll be done, that'll be given as an offering to Krishna. Since we are like attached to the body and we are looking for pleasures for the body, that's why we have these motivations. But we are at a point, like most of us are not like detached, so we still do these things. But the final thing we need to do is slowly we have to detach ourselves, so we can actually completely concentrate on devotional service. And we shouldn't be doing things with motivation for our own sense gratification. That's the message of the Bhagavad Gita. We should be doing always things as a service to the Supreme Lord, or for the sake of Supreme Lord. I hope
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you. Yeah, yes, Prabhuji. Thank you very much for the explanation.
And it's nice to see you, Sandeep Prabhu, after a long time.
Yeah, Prabhuji. Thank you.
There's something else I need to actually. I have to. The slides and everything I prepared. Actually, I have to thank Amritananda Prabhu and Surabhi. Like, they had actually made this, done a similar presentation. I think it was like last year or the year before, and I got the slides from them. And I have to thank Amritananda Prabhu and Surabhi, who uploaded it into Script. So, any other questions or anything else I can answer?
Yeah, we still have 5 more minutes. The devotees, anything you would like to add? Not necessarily the questions, but any reflections or any realizations anybody would like to add? Please go ahead. Everybody's convinced completely?
Excuse me.
Prabhuji, in the second chapter, 40th verse, it is Lord is referring and mentioning one who engages into this devotional service even a little bit can surpass from the most dangerous type of fear. Can you elaborate what are the most dangerous type of fear Krishna is offering here?
What it means here is, like, my understanding is, Prabhu, like, it's the fear of falling down. So if you're engaged in devotional service, let's say you've come, like, let's say, just for the sake of it, okay, you do like you have 50 bhakti points because of devotional service. Then you die. But in the meantime, you have actually, you have made $1 million or something. Then you die. And what happens in your next life? Those your $1 million are gone or whatever. It's not there. But your the 50 devotional points which you have made will actually make sure, like you start from that one. So that'll make sure that you have not gone into something a lower, like into a lower birth or something. So that kind of fear can will not be there when you do like this Negha Bikramana. It means like wherever you're like whatever little devotional service you do will actually save you, will protect you. Does that make sense, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yeah. The most dangerous type of fear is falling down, death. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you explained. And not getting another human body.
Yes. Like if you have to continue on your devotional service, you have to get a human body. So it definitely helps doing,
Any other comments or questions?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisance, all praise to Srila Prabhupada. I'd like to share something which one of our Sunday school kids said yesterday, and it's linking to this chapter. We were talking about Lion Guru, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj, and it was explained to the kids that lion is the king of the jungle, and a lion is fearless when he's in the jungle. So we asked the question, why is he fearless? And one child, 9 or 10 years old, he said he's fearless because he has the truth with him. He has the truth, and that makes a person fearless. So similarly over here in our chapter 2, understanding the fundamental truth that we are not the body, we are the soul, will make us fearless. Fear is loss of control over things, correct? And similarly, Subal Prabhu, as you said, fear of falling down, fear of death, we can't control. So we are afraid. But if we know that we are the spirit soul, and the spirit soul, can't be cut, can't be water can't wet eggs and can't dry, eternal. That if we have that truth with us, then there is this fearlessness. So just wanted to share this child's realization. Incidentally, that is Tejas, Harikishore Prabhu's son. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji. Very, very nice way of explaining. Even like young children have this idea.
Okay, so 8:30, we are on the top of the hours. Anything else? Anybody else before we conclude?
Let us conclude.
Okay, so let's conclude. Thank you so much, dear devotees. Thank you, Sankarshan Prabhuji and Subal Prabhu, taking time to summarize the chapter, chapters of first chapter and second chapter. It's difficult. First of all, it's not easy to summarize in such a short time. You all did that wonderful job. Thank you so much, and thank you, dear devotees, for joining today. This wonderful section of summarizing and understanding the chapters of Bhagavad Gita. It's very, very fortunate that we have this opportunity. please continue to do. Tomorrow we have great speakers as well, summarizing and giving the essence of the third chapter and fourth chapter. And please join. Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Let's conclude. Vancha kalpatarupasya. Adidanam pavanebhyo. Vaishnavibhyo namaha. Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaudiya Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Gaura Premanande.
Thank you, Sankarshan Prabhuji. Thank you, Subal.
Thank you, everybody. Hari Bol.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Sankarshan Prabhu. Thanks, Subala Prabhu.